My name is Ilara Vance. I am 52 years old, and the champagne flute slipped from Marcus Thorne's fingers precisely 3 seconds before he shattered our lives. The crystal shattered against the polished marble floor of Le Caprice. 1,000 glittering shards sprayed across the ankles of our stunned guests, gathered to celebrate our daughter Lila's graduation from the prestigious Viridian Bay Conservatory. The expensive silence that followed was thicker than the truffle foam on the amuse-bouche. 50 faces, carefully curated from decades of power brokering and charity galas, swiveled between Marcus and me, waiting for the hysterics, the tears, the crumbling facade of the perfect political wife. Marcus, my husband of 28 years, didn't even glance at the mess. His voice, usually a commanding baritone honed in boardrooms and courtrooms, cut through the brittle air. "I've decided," he announced, not to me, but to the room, "to pursue a future unburdened by pretense. Serafina and I are beginning anew." A collective intake of breath. Serafina Moreau, his junior partner at Thorne and Associates, 34, all sleek dark hair and predatory ambition, currently seated 3 tables back amongst my supposed friends. The women who lunched on my dime and whispered secrets behind silk scarves. I saw her now, a faint, satisfied flush creeping up her neck, not meeting my eye. My pulse didn't flutter. My breath didn't hitch. Years of navigating Marcus's volatile ego, his calculated cruelties disguised as charm, had forged something cold and unyielding within me. I was the steel beneath the velvet glove, the one who shelved my own dreams of architectural restoration to support his rise from ambitious prosecutor to feared defense attorney, the one who managed the labyrinthine Thorne family finances while he played the benevolent patriarch, the one who held Lila through childhood fevers and teenage heartbreaks while Marcus chased verdicts and accolades. Lila sat beside me, radiant just moments ago in her conservatory black, clutching her hard-won diploma. Now, her face was parchment white, her knuckles white where they gripped the edge of the linen-draped table. Her wide violinist's eyes, the exact shade of storm-gray sea as mine, darted between her father and me, brimming with horrified confusion. Marcus mistook my stillness for shock, for defeat. A cruel smirk touched his lips. He loved an audience, loved the spectacle of his own power. With glacial calm, I reached into my vintage Chanel clutch, not for a handkerchief, but for a single heavy envelope of cream vellum, sealed with a drop of dark red wax, the Thorne family crest, ironically. I placed it deliberately beside his overturned water glass. The sound, a soft thud, was obscenely loud in the silence. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, the smirk faltering, replaced by a flicker of unease. He hadn't anticipated props. "Consider it," I said, my voice low, clear, and carrying to every straining ear. "A roadmap to your new beginning. Read it later, when the festivities conclude." I turned, not to Marcus, but to Lila. I cupped her cold cheek, forcing her terrified gaze to mine. "My brilliant girl, this day your triumph remains untouched. I am immeasurably proud of you." I kissed her forehead, tasting salt and shock. Then I stood, smoothed the midnight blue silk of my dress, a column of quiet defiance. I addressed the gallery of gawkers, my gaze sweeping over Serafina's suddenly rigid posture, over the averted eyes of Judith Carmichael and Evelyn Rothschild, my dearest friends. "Please," I said, the word a velvet-wrapped blade, "enjoy Marcus's champagne and the show." I walked, heels clicking a steady, unhurried rhythm on the marble. 50 pairs of eyes bore into my back, a physical pressure. The heavy, brass-bound door of Le Caprice sighed shut behind me, muffling the sudden eruption of scandalized whispers. Outside, the salt-tinged fog of Viridian Bay wrapped around me like a shroud, damp and chilling. I breathed it in deeply. For the first time in decades, the air didn't taste of Marcus's expensive cologne, or the cloying scent of compromise. Behind me, the door crashed open. Marcus's footsteps were a staccato rage on the pavement. "Ilara!" His voice, stripped of its courtroom polish, was raw, panicked. "What the hell was in that envelope? What have you done?" I didn't turn. I kept walking towards the sleek, waiting town car. My car, registered solely in my name, maintained with funds Marcus never knew existed. A small, icy smile touched my lips. The vellum envelope contained the meticulously crafted first act of my vengeance. A vengeance simmering quietly for months, ever since the numbers stopped adding up and the whispers started slithering through the gilded cage of our marriage. Marcus Thorne forgot one crucial detail in his grand, humiliating exit strategy. Before I was Mrs. Vance Thorne, society hostess and political appendage, I was Ilara Vance, forensic accountant, and I specialized in making the invisible visible, especially money trails designed to disappear. The Thorne mansion on Crestview Bluff wasn't a home. It was a stage set, a sprawling steel and glass monument to Marcus's success, perched precariously above the churning Pacific. I entered the echoing silence, the only sound the distant crash of waves against the cliffs far below. The minimalist interior, all cold marble, sharp angles, and curated modern art, felt sterile, lifeless, a reflection of the marriage it housed. My sanctuary had always been the library. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, a deep Persian rug, walls lined not just with legal tomes Marcus rarely touched, but with my own collection of architectural history and finance journals. It smelled of old paper, leather, and the faint, comforting scent of the Lapsang Souchong tea I favored. Here, amidst the quiet hum of the climate control and the distant ocean, I had discovered the rot beneath the gilding. 3 months ago, a discrepancy in the quarterly trust fund report for Lila's conservatory fees. A small thing, easily dismissed as a bank error. But forensic accountants don't dismiss anomalies. We dissect them. While Marcus held court at charity balls or whispered promises to Serafina in dimly lit bars, I navigated the digital labyrinth of our intertwined finances. What I uncovered wasn't a simple affair. It was a systematic, year-long campaign of financial subterfuge. Funds siphoned from our joint investment portfolio, money I had meticulously grown, into newly established offshore accounts Marcus thought were invisible. Transfers disguised as business development costs for Thorne and Associates, funneled instead into a shell company registered in the Caymans. Payments to luxury boutiques, jewelers, travel agencies, all traceable not to Marcus directly, but to a network of intermediaries leading back to Serafina Moreau. A down payment logged for a sleek, modern penthouse overlooking Viridian Bay Harbor, purchased jointly under Emsa Thorne and S. Moreau. Text messages, discovered when Marcus carelessly left his phone unlocked after one too many single malts, laid bare the plan. After Lila's graduation, public setting, she won't make a scene. Bianca trusts me completely. That's her weakness, Bianca. He still used my middle name when discussing me with his mistress. A relic of early intimacy, now weaponized. Marcus believed his legal acumen shielded him. He believed the ironclad prenuptial agreement he had insisted upon 28 years ago, drafted when my Vance family trust vastly outweighed his fledgling prosecutor's salary, was his ultimate protection. He'd boasted about it for years, a symbol of his shrewdness. He'd forgotten, or arrogantly dismissed, Clause 7.3, the fidelity provision. A clause stating that in the event of marital infidelity combined with financial malfeasance against the marital estate, the offending party forfeited all rights to the primary residence, significant percentages of joint assets, and crucially, faced potential liability for damages incurred by the injured spouse. While Marcus plotted his dramatic exit with Serafina, whispering promises of harbor views and unburdened futures, I was constructing a legal and financial trap. I hired Silas Thorne, no relation, a delicious coincidence, a divorce attorney renowned for his quiet ruthlessness and discretion. We documented every illicit transfer, every hidden account, every text message, legally obtained in our single-party consent state. We prepared divorce papers citing adultery and financial fraud, timed perfectly. Marcus expected to serve me after the graduation, controlling the narrative. He didn't expect to be blindsided. The papers filed under seal that very morning, accessible only through the envelope I'd handed him, a courtesy before the legal tsunami hit. My phone vibrated incessantly on the library desk. Judith, Evelyn, Marcus's bewildered brother, Robert. I ignored them all except Lila. Her text was a knife twist. "Mom? Dad's saying you've gone crazy, that you planned this to ruin him." "Where are you?" I typed back, fingers steady. "My sanctuary, my love. Ignore the noise. This day is yours. We'll talk soon. Hold your head high. I love you." I'd shielded her from the ugliness, focusing her on her final recital preparations. She deserved that focus. She'd see the truth soon enough. Lila possessed my analytical mind and Marcus's fierce determination. A potent combination honed by years of mastering complex concertos. 3 hours later, the throaty roar of Marcus's Aston Martin shattered the cliffside quiet. The front door didn't open. It was kicked in, the heavy oak bouncing against the wall with a sickening crack. "Ilara!" His bellow echoed through the cavernous space, raw with fury and something else. Fear. "Get down here. Now." I was seated in my favorite armchair in the library, a fire crackling low in the hearth despite the fog outside, casting dancing shadows on the spines of books. A single lamp illuminated the divorce papers spread on the low table before me. I closed the folder as he stormed in, the vellum envelope crumpled in his fist. He looked diminished. The impeccable suit rumpled, tie askew, face flushed and unhealthy puce. The carefully styled silver hair was disheveled. The veneer of control was shattered. He waved the envelope like a weapon. "What is this insanity? Divorce papers? Served today? Are you completely unhinged?" "I thought it rather timely," I replied, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with his ragged breathing. "Aligned with your own Declaration of Independence. Consider it my contribution to your fresh start." "You vindictive bitch!" he spat, spittle flying. "You had no right." "I had every right," I countered, the steel beneath my voice finally audible. "Just as you had every right to choose Serafina. Choices have consequences, Marcus. We both make them." He drew himself up, attempting to regain his courtroom composure. A sneer twisted his lips. "The prenup expired a decade ago, Ilara. Any first-year law student could tell you that. You've wasted your time and money on theatrics." He took a step closer, looming. "We can still salvage this. Avoid a messy public spectacle. Be reasonable." I allowed a small, cold smile. "Actually, Marcus, it didn't. Clause 7.3, the fidelity provision, specifically states its terms remain binding for the duration of the marriage and any subsequent dissolution proceedings arising from its violation. Your own attorney, the estimable Charles Whitaker, drafted it. Or did you neglect to consult him before embarking on your extracurriculars?" I saw the dawning horror in his eyes as the legal trap snapped shut. "Ah, you didn't. Pity. He might have advised against the harbor penthouse." The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. The prenup he'd wielded like a shield, the symbol of his dominance, was now the anvil around his neck. This grand mansion, the cliffside view, the penthouse he'd promised Serafina, the offshore accounts, all suddenly precarious. His grand gesture hadn't just humiliated me, it had triggered his financial annihilation. His phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He ignored it, but a muscle jumped in his jaw. Serafina, wondering why her knight in shining Armani hadn't swept her off to their new love nest. "You've always been cold, Ilara," he hissed, trying a different tack, injecting a false note of wounded betrayal. "Calculating, but this? This is monstrous. 28 years? Our history? Does it mean nothing? I studied him. This man I'd loved fiercely. Stood beside through the lean early years, the crushing losses, the miscarriages before Leela, grief we'd borne together in this very room, the dizzying heights of his career. When had the ambition curdled into entitlement? When had the charm hardened into cruelty? Had he always been this hollow, and I'd been too busy polishing the facade to see the rot within? Our history meant everything to me, I said, the truth sharp and painful. That's precisely why your betrayal, Marcus, feels like a blade twisted in the gut. A betrayal not just of vows, but of every sacrifice, every shared dream. His expression flickered, a ghost of the man I once knew surfacing through the rage and panic. Then, maybe we can fix this? I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Alara. This wasn't a mistake, I said, my voice hardening. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a meticulously planned campaign, a year of lies, a year of stealing from our family, from Lila's future, a year of planning to discard me like yesterday's news in front of everyone who mattered to us. That's not a mistake, Marcus. That's premeditated cruelty. His face hardened again, the momentary vulnerability vanishing. You're exaggerating, twisting things. Am I? I picked up my phone from the table. With deliberate slowness, I opened the voice memo app, selected a file, and pressed play. Marcus's own voice, slightly tinny but unmistakable, filled the library. After the graduation ceremony. Perfect timing, public setting, Le Caprice, everyone will be there. She won't dare make a scene in front of the Rothschilds, the Carmichaels. Lila's moment, she'll swallow it. Alara's too concerned with appearances, with keeping the Vance Thorne facade intact. A pause. Then Seraphina's voice, sharp, calculating. And the money? The offshore transfers? She suspects nothing? Marcus, dismissive, arrogant. Nothing. Thinks I'm reinvesting in the firm. Alara trusts the numbers I give her blindly. That's her fatal flaw. She thinks love means trust without verification. The blood drained from Marcus's face, leaving him corpse-like. He stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. You recorded us? That's illegal. I'll have you disbarred. Ruined. Not in this state, Marcus, I replied, pocketing the phone. Single-party consent is perfectly legal and ethically sound when recorded within one's own marital home to document criminal conspiracy to defraud. I didn't record your private moments. I recorded your financial scheming. Evidence, counselor. Pure and simple. He staggered back a step, his hand gripping the back of a chair for support. The arrogance was crumbling, replaced by raw panic. I need to make calls, consult my attorney. By all means, I said, standing. I gathered my own briefcase, not a fashion accessory, but a tool of my trade. Silas Thorne advises it's prudent, though finding competent counsel on short notice, given the complexities, might prove challenging. I walked towards the library door. I'll be staying at Eleanor's tonight. Eleanor? He rasped, confusion warring with fury. My sister? Indeed, I confirmed, pausing at the threshold. She's rather upset with you. Did you know she saw you and Seraphina coming out of the Harborview Hotel last November? She confronted you. You swore it was a one-time lapse, that you'd end it immediately. When she realized you hadn't, she came to me. Last month. The betrayal from his own sister, his staunchest defender for years, was a blow he clearly hadn't anticipated. Eleanor Thorne, the formidable art gallery owner, valued loyalty above all else. Marcus had shattered that. Everyone, he muttered, the word thick with self-pity, turning against me. The consequence of weaving a web of lies, I observed coolly. It eventually ensnares the weaver. You have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to remove your personal effects from this house. After that, the locks will be changed and security protocols updated. Attempting to enter will be considered trespassing. Silas has the details. I turned to go. Lila, he blurted out, desperation cracking his voice. Think of Lila. Have you considered what this will do to her? You're tearing her apart. Rage, white-hot and blinding, finally surged through my icy control. I spun back, my voice a whip crack in the silent room. Don't you dare invoke her name! You didn't think of her when you planned your grand humiliation. You didn't think of her when you were skimming her trust fund for your mistress's baubles. You didn't think of her when you were signing papers on a penthouse while she practiced for her final recital. My chest heaved. You forfeited the right to use her as a shield the moment you chose betrayal over your family. His phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. He fumbled it out of his pocket, looked at the screen, and groaned, a sound of pure despair. Problem? I asked, my voice regaining its glacial calm. Serafina, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. She's at the penthouse. She's moved her things in early. I couldn't suppress the cold smile. The penthouse? The one under contract in both your names? At the Azure Tower? He nodded, bewildered. You might want to check with the management office, I said, my tone conversational. I understand there was a significant issue with the financing application on your end. Something flagged by their AI fraud detection system, irregularities traced back to some rather creative accounting related to Thorne and Associates escrow holdings. The agent called the primary contact number listed, this house, to verify details. I handled it. Yesterday. I let the implication hang. Enjoy your calls, Marcus. I walked out, leaving him alone in the cavernous library, surrounded by the trappings of a life he'd just obliterated. The sound of his phone hitting the wall and shattering followed me down the hall. The perfectly planned new life was unraveling faster than he could comprehend, thread by silken, treacherous thread. Eleanor Thorne lived in a converted lighthouse keeper's cottage perched dramatically on Stormwatch Point, miles from the sterile grandeur of Crestview Bluff. Wind howled around the sturdy stone walls, and the beam from the still active lighthouse swept rhythmically across the churning sea below. It felt alive, elemental, real. Eleanor opened the heavy oak door before I could knock, pulling me into a fierce, lavender-scented embrace. Silas called, she said, her voice tight with anger, guiding me into the cozy, book-filled living room. A fire roared in the hearth, battling the damp chill. The utter gall of him? At Le Caprice? In front of Lila? In front of everyone? She poured 2 generous glasses of a deep ruby Barolo. He's lost what little sense the gods gave him. It was calculated, I said, sinking into a worn leather armchair, the warmth of the fire seeping into my bones. Maximum humiliation, a public execution of our marriage. He expected tears, hysteria, a crumbling mess he could point to as justification. He didn't expect countermeasures. Eleanor handed me a glass, her sharp eyes assessing me. You look steady, more than steady. What was in the envelope, Alara? Beyond the obvious? I took a sip, the rich wine warming me from the inside. I explained it all. The prenup's forgotten clause, the meticulously documented financial hemorrhage, the damning recordings, the timing of the filing. The envelope contained the detonator, I finished. The divorce papers were just the fuse, the evidence of fraud tied to the infidelity clause. That's the explosive charge. Eleanor let out a low whistle. Clause 7.3. I'd forgotten about that. Father insisted on it, you know. Back when Marcus was still wet behind the ears and your family money was the only thing keeping him afloat. He thought Marcus needed tempering. She laughed, a bitter sound. The irony is thick enough to choke on. Marcus, hoist by his own petard. She raised her glass. To forensic accountants and forgotten clauses. My phone buzzed. Lila, Mom, Aunt Elle says you're there. Dad's telling people you've had a breakdown, that you've been planning this for years to destroy him. He's scaring me. Can I come? My heart clenched. Of course, my love. Come whenever you're ready. Ignore the noise. The truth is armor. I sent the reply, then showed Eleanor the screen. Eleanor's face darkened. Poisoning the well. Typical Marcus. Damage control through character assassination. 20 minutes later, headlights cut through the fog outside. Lila stumbled in, still wearing her elegant concert black, but her face was ravaged, tears carving tracks through her carefully applied makeup. She looked heartbreakingly young. She flew into my arms, burying her face in my shoulder, her body shaking with silent sobs. "Why didn't you tell me?" she gasped, pulling back, her storm-gray eyes searching mine, wounded and accusatory. All these months, I knew something was wrong. He was distant, always on his phone, snapping. But this? Your final semester, your recital? It was everything, I said, smoothing her hair, my own voice thick. You poured your soul into that performance. I wouldn't let his mess taint that. You deserved to shine, unfettered. Well, he tainted it anyway, she cried, anger flaring through the hurt. He ruined it, my big day, and he turns it into this. She gestured wildly, encompassing the betrayal, the public spectacle. We moved to the sofa by the fire. Eleanor brought Lila a glass of water and a warm blanket. And there, in the flickering firelight with the wind howling outside, I told my daughter the unvarnished truth. The affair, the financial deceit, the siphoning of funds, the offshore accounts, the payments to Serafina, the penthouse. The cold, calculated planning behind the public humiliation. I showed her copies of bank transfers, heavily redacted for sensitivity, screenshots of property records. I played a short, carefully chosen snippet of the recording, just Marcus dismissing my trust as a weakness. Lila listened, her initial shock hardening into a cold, furious understanding. I knew it, she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. About the money. Last semester, when my scholarship didn't cover the masterclass fees, I asked him. He said times were tight, the firm was struggling. He made me feel guilty for asking, and all the while... Her fists clenched. He deserves everything Silas throws at him, Mom. Everything. He's still your father, I reminded her gently, though the words felt hollow even to me. Your relationship with him, that's separate, complicated. You don't have to choose sides in the way he's forcing me to. Lila shook her head vehemently. He made the choice for me when he did this. When he lied to me. When he stole from us. She hugged me again, fiercely protective. I choose truth. I choose you. My phone buzzed again, a text from Silas. Emergency freeze granted by Judge Henderson. All identified accounts locked pending hearing. His personal slush fund remains accessible, barely. Well played, Alara. I showed it to Eleanor and Lila. A grim satisfaction settled over us. The first tangible blow had landed. Marcus's liquidity, his ability to fund his escape or his legal defense, was suddenly strangled. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent through the wind's moan. Eleanor sighed, her expression hardening. Speak of the devil, and he's brought his acolyte. She strode to the door. Marcus stood on the threshold, rain glistening in his disheveled hair, looking like a cornered, dangerous animal. Beside him, Serafina Moreau, huddled in a ridiculously thin designer trench, her face pale, eyes wide with a mix of apprehension and simmering anger. She looked less like the confident mistress now, more like someone realizing the lifeboat she'd jumped into was sinking. Eleanor didn't invite them in. She simply stood aside, her posture radiating icy disdain. Marcus brushed past her, his gaze locking onto me. Serafina followed, her heels clicking nervously on the stone floor, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding Lila's scorching glare. "Ilara?" Marcus began, attempting his courtroom voice, but it cracked, revealing the strain. "This has gone far enough. You need to call off Silas, unfreeze the accounts. We can settle this like civilized people, without dragging everyone through the mud." Lila stood up, placing herself slightly between Marcus and me. Her voice, usually soft and melodic, was cold steel. "Civilized? Like announcing you were abandoning Mom in front of 50 people at my graduation celebration? That's your definition of civilized?" Marcus flinched, momentarily thrown by her directness. "Lila, this is between your mother and me. It's complicated. Adults. Relationships evolve." "Evolve?" Lila's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Is that what you call stealing from our family? Moving money while telling me we couldn't afford the masterclass I needed? Planning your new life with her?" She spat the word, glaring at Serafina. "While pretending everything was fine? That's not evolution, Dad. That's betrayal. That's cowardice." Serafina flinched, color rising in her cheeks. She touched Marcus's arm. "Marcus, perhaps... this isn't the place." He shook her off roughly. "No! We're settling this now. Ilara, unfreeze the funds. Today, or I swear, I'll make the divorce so ugly, so public, you'll wish you'd never started this." Eleanor stepped forward, a formidable presence. "The only ugliness here, Marcus, is of your own making. Ilara seems the only one acting with any semblance of reason or dignity. You storm into my home, making demands and threats. You've upset Lila enough for one lifetime. Leave. Now." Marcus ignored her, his eyes burning into mine. "What about the penthouse? The Azure deal? The agent called, screaming about frozen funds. What did you do?" "I ensured the financing application was subject to appropriate scrutiny," I replied calmly, remaining seated. Given the irregularities flagged in Thorne and Associates' recent escrow audits, due diligence was rigorous. The freeze simply accelerates the inevitable discovery process. The accounts will remain locked, pending the preliminary hearing. Judge Henderson's orders. 3 days! Marcus exploded. "I have obligations. Payments. What am I supposed to do for 3 days?" "Your personal account," I reminded him coolly. "The one you've been diligently diverting funds into via the Cayman Shell Company? Marlin Holdings? That should tide you over. For a while." Serafina's head snapped around so fast, I heard her neck crack. She stared at Marcus, her eyes wide with dawning fury and betrayal. "Marlin Holdings? A separate account? How much, Marcus? How much did you really have stashed?" The dynamic shifted palpably. The united front crumbled. Marcus had clearly kept Serafina on a need-to-know basis, feeding her promises, but hiding the true extent of his financial maneuvering. And now, his vulnerability. "Not now, Sarah," Marcus muttered, trying to dismiss her. "Not now?" Serafina's voice rose, shrill with panic and anger. "You told me everything was consolidated. You told me the Azure deal was solid. You told me she pointed a shaking finger at me, would roll over." "I think," I said, standing finally, my voice cutting through their brewing argument. Eleanor was quite clear. "Leave. Now. Or I call the harbor patrol. Stormwatch Point is remote, Marcus. Response times can be leisurely." Marcus looked from me to Eleanor's stony face, to Lila's icy contempt, to Serafina's furious, frightened glare. He was isolated, cornered. The master manipulator had lost control of his narrative and his allies. With a final, inarticulate sound of rage, he turned and stalked out into the storm-lashed night. Serafina shot me a look of pure venom before scrambling after him, her designer heels slipping on the wet stone path. The heavy door closed. The silence in the cottage was profound, broken only by the crackling fire and the relentless wind. Leela sank back onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I've never spoken to him like that," she whispered, her voice muffled. I sat beside her, pulling her close. Sometimes, my love, speaking truth to power is the hardest, most necessary thing we ever do. Especially when the power wears the face of someone we loved. Eleanor brought fresh glasses of wine. She raised hers, her gaze steady on mine, reflecting the firelight. To the Vance women, to truth, and to the exquisite unfolding of poetic justice. We clinked glasses. The storm outside mirrored the tempest Marcus had unleashed. But inside the sturdy lighthouse cottage, sheltered by truth and resolve, we were safe. The battle lines were drawn. The war for my future, for Lila's stability, for justice, had truly begun. And Marcus Thorne, for the first time in his charmed, ruthless life, was hopelessly outmaneuvered. The cold fire of my vengeance had only just begun to burn.